Fans call him humanity's strongest. But what if Levi Ackerman's true weapon isn't his blades? What if it's manipulation, wielded as instinctively as his swords? Levi Ackerman, the stoic captain, the ultimate soldier, the unbreakable wall against humanity's extinction. To fans, he's the embodiment of composure and strength, a man admired for his sense of justice, loyalty, and uncompromising resolve. His quiet devotion to his comrades and tragic past make him a paragon of self-sacrifice, celebrated as a flawless icon. Levi commands a kind of legendary reverence. Viewers are drawn in by his unmatched skills, dry wit, and calm authority. His rare moments of vulnerability, especially towards comrades like Erwin, seem to hint at a deeper, wounded humanity. For many, Levi is the beating heart of Attack on Titan, a protector, a tragic hero, maybe even the ultimate survivor. But here's the thing. Beneath those accolades, evidence of a darker language surfaces. Consider the moment in episode 21 of Season 1, when Levi comforts a dying subordinate while coldly extracting information. His words drip with calculated calm, not compassion. Even in moments of kindness, Levi chooses words not to heal, but to steer, to control emotions, to extract outcomes. Is this empathy, or is it manipulation wearing a mask? Let's look at the Uprising Arc. Levi's decision to torture the Reeves Trading Company head to force cooperation. He never offers trust or transparency, just options that ensure compliance through fear and calculated mercy. Or the way he orchestrates Eren's trial, publicly brutalizing him, not just for military discipline, but to shape the perception of the court. Levi bends people, situations, and even narratives to his will, regardless of the personal cost to himself or others. Recall the confrontation with Kenny Ackerman, the mentor who taught Levi much of what he knows. In their final moments, Levi's forgiveness is more a calculated negotiation than emotional reconciliation. It's about closing the book on an unpredictable threat. Even with his own team, Levi withholds the truth, compartmentalizes decisions, and weaponizes silence. These aren't one-off moments, they're a pattern. When we map Levi's behavior across different arcs, a pattern emerges. His empathy rarely manifests as transparent connection. Instead, it becomes selective, transactional, and strategic. Manipulation is not a failing or a slip, it's his primary mode of survival. Whether dealing with superiors, enemies, or closest friends, Levi exploits vulnerabilities, leverages secrets, and controls information. This is his language, because for Levi, open vulnerability is simply not an option. But let's place these actions in context. Others in the Survey Corps, like Erwin or Hange, seek consensus or lead with inspiration. Even under the same existential threats, they risk emotional openness. But Levi, shaped by a world of betrayal, cannot. His choices often maximize short-term survival at the expense of long-term trust. The narrative frames him as justified, but judged by the same standards as anyone else, Levi's tactics come off as cold, coercive, and sometimes devastatingly cruel. To understand this, we need to remember Levi's origins. Abandoned in the filth of the underground, raised by a murderer uncle, and orphaned before he ever felt safe, Levi's world was one where manipulation wasn't a choice, it was a survival skill. The trauma of losing Farlan and Isabel, and the constant churn of loss within the Corps, only deepened his reliance on calculation over connection. Yes, this evokes sympathy, but sympathy doesn't erase damaging patterns. What psychological defenses does Levi deploy? Denial of his own needs, rationalization of violence, and emotional distance as necessity. Displacement of trust onto rigid procedures, not people. He justifies withholding truths or issuing cold commands, not because he can't feel, but because to feel is to become vulnerable again. And that, to Levi, means inviting annihilation. Levi's core wound is clear: abandonment and betrayal. His entire persona is constructed to prevent further loss, to control every possible variable, even at the cost of humanity. He is desperate to prevent chaos from taking those he loves, but in doing so, he manipulates everyone around him, never letting anyone truly in. His tragedy: he isn't just cut off from others, he's made himself unable to reach for help, locked behind the armor of control. And who pays for this? Think of his subordinates, like Petra, Oluo, and the rest of the squad, ensnared by Levi's unreachable standards and kept at emotional arm's length. His manipulation damages trust, breeds fatal loyalty, and at times leads his own team to ruin. Why did Petra's father believe she was close to Levi? because he fostered devotion, not mutual understanding. The ripples extend outward. Levi crushes dissent, sometimes silences alternative viewpoints, and soldiers who might have grown become casualties of his emotionally manipulative order. While the Survey Corps wins battles, the psychological toll is immense. His legacy is not just heroic victories, but silent, collective trauma. So let's do the math. Levi saves countless lives, but at what personal and organizational cost? How many follow him out of true faith, and how many because they're cornered, scared, or unable to dissent? The scales aren't as pristine as fans want to believe. For every life spared by his decisiveness, another bond is sacrificed at the altar of survival. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Levi Ackerman is not just humanity's strongest soldier, he's its ultimate manipulator. Canon paints him less as a selfless hero, and more as a survivor who learned to weaponize control as his only means to keep himself, and maybe his world, intact. Why do fans resist this reading? Partly because Levi's trauma is so compelling, they want to forgive everything. The narrative itself shields him, framing his acts as necessary, setting the world up as so dark that every manipulation feels justified. By focusing on his losses, the story invites us to look away from the costs Levi imposes on others. But thematically, Levi represents something darker in Attack on Titan: the price of survival under constant threat. He asks, what gets lost when the only language we speak is control? The author Hajime Isayama mirrors real-world trauma. Those who suffer often become masters of manipulation, not by malice, but by necessity, and leave more scars in their wake than they acknowledge. The tragic irony? In seeking to protect and shield himself from more loss, Levi perpetuates the very cycle of distance and pain that defines his childhood. He becomes a mirror of the world that hurt him, ensuring his own isolation, even as he fights for connection. So, this analysis leaves us with uneasy questions. Can someone shaped by trauma ever lead without inflicting more suffering? When is calculated manipulation justified, if ever? And what does it cost a soul when it becomes the only language they know? Despite his darkness, Levi remains magnetic. His tragedy elevates him from a typical hero to a deeply human, deeply flawed anti-hero. He forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about leadership, trauma, and the limits of empathy in impossible times. That's why Levi endures, and why he'll always provoke debate. Levi Ackerman's true legacy is not invincibility, but the scars, visible and invisible, he leaves behind, both in others and within himself. So the next time you praise Levi's discipline, ask yourself, is it strength or a mask for something much more dangerous? If you think Levi is complex, wait until we uncover the disturbing reality behind Mikasa Ackerman and the truths about devotion that attack every fan belief. Subscribe to face the next uncomfortable secret.